You weren't born to live in fear, not to walk on eggshells, not to shrink just to be loved. But somewhere along the way, the world convinced you that pain was normal. I'm here to tell you, it's not. And starting today, nobody and nothing will ever hurt you the same way again. Let me ask you something quietly but honestly. Have you ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back? Not because of age, not because of the lines on your face, but because you've spent so long trying to be what everyone else needed, that you forgot who you are. If that hits a little too close to home, you're not alone. Because this is where the journey begins. Not with confidence, not with clarity, not with strength. It begins with pain. And I don't mean the pain of a scraped knee or a bad breakup. I'm talking about that deep, lingering ache. The one you carry in silence. The one that whispers in the background of your happiest moments. You're not enough. You're too much. You're too broken to be loved the way you wish you could be. But here's something we rarely talk about. The pain didn't just come from what others did to you. It came from what you started believing about yourself because of it. Somewhere along the line, you internalized the lie that their inability to love you properly meant you were unworthy of love. You thought if you were just a little nicer, quieter, smarter, stronger, more selfless, maybe then you'd finally be enough. So you built walls, not to shut people out, but to survive. You put on armor, not to fight, but to keep yourself from breaking. You wore the smile. You played the role. You became the strong one. The one who keeps it together. The one who says, I'm fine, even when you're falling apart on the inside. But pretending to be bulletproof comes with a cost. And maybe, just maybe, you're tired of paying it. Maybe you're exhausted from trying to meet everyone's expectations. From being everything to everyone, while slowly becoming no one to yourself. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a beautiful mirror, cracked but still shining. That mirror is you, still reflecting light, still holding beauty, but fractured from years of impact. Years of criticism, abandonment, betrayal, not always in loud, dramatic ways. Sometimes it was the silence, the neglect, the absence. And to cope, you built armor. A tough shell. You walked around convincing the world, and maybe even yourself, that you're fine, that nothing gets to you, that you're strong. But strength isn't pretending you're unbreakable. Strength is allowing yourself to feel, and still choosing to rise. Because healing doesn't start when the world stops hurting you. It starts when you stop hurting yourself in the name of keeping others comfortable. It starts when you stop performing and start getting honest. When you stop hiding the cracks, and realize those cracks are where your light gets through. The truth is, the pain you've been carrying isn't proof of your weakness. It's proof of how deeply you've felt, how much you've tried, and how much you still care. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. You don't have to shrink to be safe. You don't have to break yourself into pieces just to be digestible to others. What you do need, what we all need, is a moment of truth. A moment where you finally say, I've had enough. Enough of performing. Enough of pretending. Enough of letting old wounds write new chapters. This, right here, is that moment. Because the journey back to yourself doesn't begin with applause. It doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with a whisper in the dark. There has to be more than this. And there is. But to find it, you have to stop running from the pain and start listening to what it's been trying to teach you. That your worth was never meant to be negotiated. That your softness is not a weakness. That your story is not over. That beneath the armor and the noise and the exhaustion, you are still whole. Yes, maybe you feel shattered, but you are not destroyed. You are not broken beyond repair. You are becoming. And the pain, it's not the end of your story. It's just the beginning of your return. Back to yourself. Back to your voice. Back to the power that was never truly gone, only hidden. So take a breath. Drop the armor. Look at your reflection, not with judgment, but with compassion. And know this, This is the moment your healing begins. Not because someone fixed you, but because you remembered you were never truly broken. Let me remind you of something you may have forgotten. You weren't born to suffer, not to constantly prove your worth, not to live your life chasing scraps of love, acceptance, or validation, not to shrink, bend, and break just to make other people feel more comfortable. But somewhere along the line, something changed. You were born with light, a quiet brilliance, an unshakable worth that needed no explanation. As a child, you didn't question if you deserved to be loved. You didn't think twice about expressing yourself. You danced when there was no music. You asked questions without fear of judgment. You existed, fully and freely, because you hadn't yet been taught to doubt your own light. But over time, life piled on its layers. Little moments started to weigh you down. Maybe it was the first time someone made you feel too much, too loud, too sensitive, too emotional. Maybe it was when your kindness was taken for weakness, or your silence was mistaken for agreement. You began to adapt. You dimmed your light, not because it stopped shining, but because it felt safer to blend in than to stand out. You started editing yourself, trading authenticity for approval. You took on roles, the fixer, the peacekeeper, the overachiever, hoping that if you just gave enough, did enough, became enough, someone would finally choose you. But what happens when your entire identity is built around making others comfortable, while your own soul is screaming to be seen? You suffer, quietly, constantly. And here's the thing. That kind of suffering doesn't come from the outside. It comes from betraying yourself in the name of being accepted. We've been told that self-sacrifice is noble, that putting others first makes you a good person. But let's be real. How good is it to live a life where your needs are always last? Where your voice is silenced? Where your worth is measured by how small you can make yourself? That's not nobility. That's slow erosion. You were not put on this earth to carry everyone else's burdens while abandoning your own truth. You were not meant to wear pain like a second skin, as if it were your identity. And I know, breaking free from that cycle isn't easy. When you've spent years defining yourself through what others need, the thought of choosing yourself can feel selfish. But it's not selfish. It's sacred. Choosing yourself is the most courageous thing you can do in a world that constantly asks you to shrink. It's waking up and saying, I will no longer abandon myself for love. I will no longer twist myself into shapes just to be accepted. I will no longer sacrifice my peace to keep the peace. Because here's what you need to hear. And maybe no one's ever said it this clearly before. You are not broken. You are buried. Beneath the layers of pain, people-pleasing, and perfectionism, is the real you. The bold you. The honest you. The you that was never meant to suffer in silence. So ask yourself, who would you be if you stopped trying to be liked, and started trying to be whole? What would your life look like if your joy wasn't dependent on how others respond to you? What if your energy, your light, your love, wasn't something to be earned, but something to be protected? Because the truth is, not everyone will understand your journey. Not everyone will clap when you choose yourself. But that's not your problem. Your only job is to stop betraying yourself. Stop saying yes when your body is screaming no. Stop bending to fit into spaces you were never meant to belong in. You weren't born to suffer. You were born to live. Love. Feel joy. Not just when it's convenient for others, but when it's true for you. And if no one's ever told you this before, let me be the first. You deserve a life that feels like freedom. Not performance. Not survival. Not silent suffering. But freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you stop asking for permission to exist fully. When you stop proving and start believing. When you reclaim your voice, your time, your boundaries, your truth. Because when you do, you don't just stop suffering. You start becoming. Let's get real about something that far too many of us were never taught. You are allowed to say no. You're allowed to protect your energy. You're allowed to put yourself first. And you're allowed to walk away from anything or anyone, that disrupts your peace. Now I know what you might be thinking, but I don't want to hurt anyone. What if they get upset? What if they think I'm selfish? But here's what I want you to understand: choosing yourself is not a betrayal of others. It's a commitment to yourself. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, then maybe they were never respecting you to begin with. See, many of us were conditioned to believe that being a good person means always being available, always saying yes, always putting other people's needs ahead of our own. But all that does is teach people that your time, your energy, your emotions, they're negotiable, that your silence means consent, that your boundaries are flexible, and that is how resentment is born. Because the more you say yes when you mean no, the more your life starts to feel like it doesn't belong to you anymore. You become exhausted. You become invisible, even to yourself. And worst of all, you start to believe that your worth is tied to how useful or accommodating you are to others. But let me offer you a different truth. Your worth is not measured by your willingness to shrink. It's measured by your courage to stand tall. And one of the bravest things you can do is look someone in the eye and say, no. Not this time. Not because you're angry. Not because you're cruel. But because you're choosing peace. Because you're finally honoring the quiet voice inside you that's been begging you to stop sacrificing yourself for everyone else's comfort. Let's talk about boundaries. Not the cold, distant, build-a-wall kind, but the healthy, clear, compassionate kind that says, I respect you, but I also respect myself, and I'm no longer going to abandon myself to keep this relationship alive. Because boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about letting the right people in. The people who see your no and still love you. The people who don't get offended when you choose yourself. The people who respect your time, your space, your needs, because they genuinely respect you. And the truth is, if someone walks away because you finally drew a line, they were benefiting from your lack of one. So I want to ask you something. When was the last time you said yes, when everything in your body screamed no? When was the last time you canceled on yourself to be there for someone else? When was the last time you apologized for setting a boundary that protected your sanity? If those questions hit home, you're not alone. We've all been there. But you don't have to stay there. You don't need to explain why you're unavailable. You don't need to justify why something doesn't feel right. And you definitely don't need to apologize for protecting your peace. This is your life, your energy, your healing, and it deserves to be guarded. Not in fear, but in wisdom. The people who truly love you won't just accept your boundaries, they'll appreciate them. They'll celebrate your growth. They'll adjust. Not guilt trip. They'll say, thank you for being honest with me, instead of why are you being distant. And when you surround yourself with people like that, people who honor your truth, you begin to thrive. Because you're no longer spending your time pretending. You're living from a place of alignment, of ownership, of power. So the next time you feel guilty for choosing yourself, I want you to remember this. You are not here to be everyone's solution. You are not here to carry what isn't yours. You are not here to make yourself smaller so others can feel bigger. You are here to live, fully and freely, without apology. And sometimes, that begins with a single word. No, not today. Not anymore. Not if it costs me my peace. Because the moment you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable, is the moment you finally come home to yourself. And that is where your power begins. Let's talk about something we've been taught to fear. Feelings. Real ones. Raw ones. The kind that make your voice shake, your hands tremble, your heart feel too heavy for your chest. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that emotions are a weakness, that tears are a problem to be fixed, that pain is something to be hidden, shoved down, or numbed away. But what if we've been taught wrong? What if pain isn't the enemy, but the invitation? What if your deepest wound isn't there to break you, but to wake you? See, the truth is, your emotions are not the problem. Hiding them is. We've been told that being strong means keeping it together, holding it in, smiling when you're dying inside. But let me tell you something powerful. There is nothing weak about feeling deeply. Your tears are not a breakdown. They are a breakthrough. A signal that something inside of you is rising, calling for your attention, asking, begging, to be seen. Pain is not something you get over. It's something you move through. And the only way out is through. So stop running, stop distracting, stop pretending. Let it rise, let it speak, let it teach you. Because every time you suppress your pain, you bury a piece of yourself with it. And eventually, you forget how to feel anything at all. But when you let yourself feel, when you stop apologizing for your emotions, you begin to reclaim the parts of you that got lost in survival mode. Here's the truth no one tells you. Healing doesn't come from ignoring your pain. It comes from facing it. That moment when you finally allow yourself to cry, not in secret, not in shame, but in full surrender. That's not weakness. That's courage. It's saying, this hurt me, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't. It's saying, I matter enough to feel this, to honor this. It's saying, I don't have to carry this pain forever, but I do have to stop running from it. Because pain, when acknowledged, becomes power, not because it disappears, but because you no longer fear it. It no longer controls you. It becomes part of your story, not the end of it. I want you to imagine this. You're standing in front of a mirror. You're tired, tear-streaked, maybe a little broken. But for the first time, you're not judging your reflection. You're not covering it with a mask. You re-looking at yourself and seeing truth. That's what healing looks like. Not perfection, not having it all together, but facing yourself with honesty and compassion. And that's where the shift begins. Because when you stop hiding your pain, you start listening to it. And when you start listening, you start learning. Pain teaches. It teaches where your boundaries were crossed, where your needs were unmet, where your voice was silenced, where your heart broke in a way that still echoes today. But it also teaches this. You survived, and surviving means there's still something in you worth fighting for. So instead of asking, how do I stop hurting? Start asking, what is this pain trying to show me? Maybe it's showing you that you need rest. Or that it's time to walk away. Or that a part of you is ready to be reclaimed. Whatever it is, listen. Because once you face the truth, once you stop hiding the wounds and start healing them, you begin to remember who you were before the world told you to be quiet, be small, be strong at all costs. And that version of you, the one who feels deeply, loves fully, breaks beautifully, and rises honestly, that's the real you, not the one who hides, not the one who pleases, but the one who says, this is my pain. This is my truth. And I'm not ashamed of either. Because feeling isn't failure. It's freedom. And on the other side of that freedom is a version of you that no longer fears being seen. A version of you that stands in your story without apology. A version of you that knows your pain didn't destroy you. It built you. So the next time the tears come, don't push them away. Let them cleanse. Let them clear. Let them carry you to the other side, where power is born from honesty, and peace is built on truth. You are not weak because you feel. You are strong because you do. Let me ask you something that might sound simple, but it could change everything. What if today was the day you decided to rewrite your story? Not next week, not when you're ready, not when life finally gets easier, but right now, in this very moment. What if I told you that you don't have to keep living out the same script you didn't even choose? Because here's the truth most people never hear. You have the power to choose again. Every single day. You are not stuck. You are not powerless. And you are definitely not just a product of what's happened to you. You are the author. And your story isn't over. Not even close. I know life may have handed you some tough chapters. Loss, rejection, trauma. Maybe you grew up in survival mode, learning to put everyone else first just to feel safe. Maybe you've been carrying labels that were never yours to begin with. Too emotional, not enough, difficult, unlovable. But those labels? They don't define you. Your past doesn't define you. Even your pain doesn't define you. They may explain how you got here, sure, but they don't get to decide where you go next. You do, because the most powerful truth you can ever accept is this: you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a creator of your reality. And creation starts with choice. The way you choose to show up. The way you choose to respond instead of react. The way you choose love over fear. Peace over chaos. Growth over comfort. It's all a choice. And no, that doesn't mean everything is within your control. It doesn't mean life won't throw unexpected storms your way. But it does mean that how you navigate those storms, that part is always yours. So let's make this real. If you've been stuck in a loop, reliving the same emotional pain, the same toxic cycles, the same self-doubt, I want you to pause and ask yourself this: what am I still choosing to carry that I could put down today? Because even pain becomes familiar. Even dysfunction can feel like home when it's all you've known. But just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's right for you. You don't have to keep playing the role of the one who always sacrifices, or the one who never gets picked, or the one who just gets through life, hoping something better comes along. You get to choose a new role, not the background character, not the survivor, but the main character, the one who takes ownership, who stops waiting for someone else to give permission, who realizes that healing isn't a destination, it's a daily decision to stop abandoning yourself. Because every time you choose to speak your truth, to set a boundary, to walk away from what no longer serves you, to show up for yourself, even when no one else does, you are rewriting the story. And I want you to know, it's never too late. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not disqualified. You're just being called into a new chapter. Point one that you actually get to write. So what do you want it to say? What kind of life do you want to build? What kind of love do you want to receive? What kind of peace do you want to protect? Start there. Start small if you need to. A single choice. A shift in mindset. A moment of stillness where you remind yourself, I'm allowed to want more. I'm allowed to change. Because this life, it doesn't belong to your past. It belongs to your present power. You get to evolve. You get to outgrow who you were. You get to become the version of you that maybe you've only imagined, but have always deserved to be. And yes, it's going to take courage. It's going to take unlearning. It's going to take walking away from stories that once kept you safe, but now keep you small. But what's waiting for you on the other side? Freedom, clarity. Self-trust. A life that feels like yours. So today, make the choice, not to be perfect, not to be fearless, but to be intentional. Because the life you want isn't found in the future. It's created by the choices you make now. And it starts with one truth: you have the power to choose again. So choose wisely, choose boldly. Choose you. If you've made it this far, I want you to pause and really take this in. Nobody and nothing can hurt you the way they used to. Why? Because you've made a decision, maybe for the first time in your life, to choose yourself. And when you choose yourself, not as a reaction, but as a conscious act of self-respect, something radical happens. The outside world loses its power to break you. That doesn't mean life won't challenge you. That doesn't mean people won't disappoint you. But it does mean that your worth is no longer up for negotiation. It means your identity is no longer built on what others think of you. It means you are no longer emotionally held hostage by things you cannot control. You've set boundaries. You've owned your truth. You've stopped apologizing for needing space, needing clarity, needing peace. And that is power. Because the most unshakable strength doesn't come from pretending to be untouchable. It comes from knowing who you are, and standing in that truth. Regardless of how the world responds. You've realized now that protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's survival. It's self-respect. And more than that, it's the foundation of a life that finally feels yours. Let me ask you something. What used to destroy you? Was it a single word, a look, A memory that never let go. Now look at who you are today. That thing may still hurt, but it no longer defines you. It no longer dictates your worth or your direction. That's not weakness. That's healing. And healing doesn't make you invincible. It makes you clear. It makes you rooted. It makes you brave enough to say, I no longer choose pain that disguises itself as love. Because you've walked through the fire. You've bled. You've broken. And still, you've chosen softness. You've chosen wholeness. You've chosen to be here, now, with open eyes and an open heart. And that's where your true power lies. So no, this isn't the end of your story. This is the beginning of a new one. A chapter where you stop trying to fix what was never your responsibility. A chapter where you stop chasing people who don't know how to love you. A chapter where you stop abandoning yourself just to belong. You've outgrown your silence. You've outgrown the spaces that once felt like home but now feel like cages. You've outgrown being the version of yourself who lived to be chosen. Because now, you choose you. You wake up and look in the mirror and say, I am enough. I am not broken. I am becoming. Becoming what? Becoming the kind of person who sets the tone for how they're treated. The kind of person who speaks gently to themselves. The kind of person who creates a life they don't need to escape from. And yes, you will still have bad days. Yes, the old wounds might whisper now and then. But you're different now. You listen, but you don't live there. You feel, but you don't collapse. You care, but you don't carry what isn't yours. Because you've remembered something powerful. You are the anchor. You are the author. You are the one you've been waiting for. So let this be your reminder. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your boundaries. You don't need permission to start again. And you don't need to be fixed. Because you're not broken. You are becoming brighter, bolder, clearer, stronger. This is your time. This is your turn. This is your freedom. So walk forward, unapologetically, unshaken, unstoppable. Because the world may try to shake you, but now you know, nothing and no one can hurt you the same way again. You've returned to yourself. And there's no power greater than that.